Here with my man Michael Wimberly today. DJ Zesto Q. Just want to send a big shout out to everyone in the house. I got 845 Live in the house. Got my man Dylan Cole with Stolen Sound System. And this is one of the first installments for an ongoing series that we're going to begin starting today of for the Stolen Sound System, where we interview musicians, we get an introspective on their career and their take on what they do with their music and just music in general, have good discussions about music. So we're here today with percussion, jazz percussionist, drummer, multi-instrumentalist, and recording artist Michael Wimberly, who I've known, pleasure to know, for about 15 years plus now. And we're just going to get into it. Michael's a professor at Bennington College up in Vermont, and he's been playing music, I think, forever. So let's get into it. Michael, one thing I wanted to talk to you a little bit about is that I know you're from Ohio.
Yeah.
And when I started DJing and I started collecting records, it wasn't until later that I found out that so many funk bands are from Ohio. So maybe if that, maybe you could talk about that a little bit. Was funk a big influence on you growing up?
Oh, well, first of all, thank you, Zest.
Yo.
Zesto. Yeah,
looks,
bro.
Man.
Yeah, I mean, I'm out of that early 60s era, you know. The music was funky. I mean, we were beating on cars and boxes and things like that, you know, just to mimic the sound of James Brown or the beats. I was just starting to listen to jazz, but wasn't really familiar what that was, exactly who the artists were.
Okay.
I mean, but I'm also old enough to be influenced and enjoy the sound of doo-wop. So that was kind of crossing over, and so really my first record was, I don't remember the group's name, but the title was Papa Ooh Mau Mau.
Okay.
Papa Ooh Mau Mau. I love that record, you know, but at the same time, James Brown was there, you know, Sly Stone, Aretha, those sounds, the sounds of soul were in the air, but classical music was there too, through you know, Mickey Mouse records, you know, 78s and things like that. So the funk was all around me, really. Out of Cleveland is where I'm from originally, and
Okay.
just when I think about funk, like the Gap Band out of Ohio, or I'll just jump ahead and say I did play with a concert with the Funkadelics when Funkadelic.
Yeah.
With the guitarist Mike Hampton, because I went to school with his brother, and so that was kind of a connect for me. So I got a chance to play with the band.
Nice.
And I'd never been funked that hard.
Yeah.
So that was that was funk, boy.
Yeah.
But I played djembe on that concert, which was interesting. You know, just
What year was this?
around 1993, somewhere around there.
No doubt.
Yeah, but still, when I think about just the influence of the sound of funk and rock too. I mean, I would go to concerts at stadiums in Cleveland, and here the mix was huge. It was from Earth, Wind and Fire, but ZZ Top opened.
Yeah.
You got Earth, Wind and Fire, and then more of a rock group called Uriah Heep, which was popular at the time.
Okay.
Or you go to rock concerts like Emerson, Lake and Palmer, Yes,
The prog rock
King
thing.
Crimson, yeah, the whole prog rock thing.
Right.
But the local band, the local clubs might have had Miles in it, you know, or this violinist Michael Urbaniak.
I know that name.
But
Yeah.
they were funky. It was progressive jazz, but at the core of it was funk.
Yeah.
You know, so that's what was going on, man. But my first album really was not funk. It was by the great alto saxophonist. He had a brother, Adderley.
Oh, yeah. The Adderleys?
Yeah, so
Sure.
it was Nat Adderley and his brother.
Cannonball.
Cannonball Adderley.
Yeah, no doubt.
Just blanking. So
Are
Cannonball.
they from the West Coast?
I don't know. I know Nat Adderley's son, Nat Adderley Jr., lives in New Jersey.
Okay.
Great pianist. He was Luther Vandross' music director and arranger during Luther's entire
No
career.
doubt.
So I didn't know that until later when I started working with him as a jazz pianist. But still, with Cannonball Adderley's album, this album called Experience in E, was just, I mean, it was crazy because it was jazz, yes, but it was like film music. You know, I mean, you got strings and horns and a lot of arranging and colors in this music and funk. You know, so that was, so maybe that's why my ear caught it, or I could understand it at least.
Yeah.
But you know, funk was all around us. It was just a natural part of our existence, our language, our movement.
Yeah. Now let me ask you, what was the first instrument you began playing? Was it always drums?
It was at first it was the voice. You know, as a kid, just singing.
Yeah.
Definitely that, but I never pursued it as a singer. I can still sing a little bit, but I never. I don't call myself a singer. But it was a drum set.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
And how old were you when you first started playing drums?
13.
13.
Yeah.
And you got a drum set.
I got a drum set, a little drum set, and then I just every year for holidays I'd get another part. You know, so I guess if anything, it made my mother realize that okay, he's interested in this thing. And then maybe around age 14, 15, I'd start to take drum lessons. She didn't know what kind of drum lessons. I was thinking drum set, but where I went to school, it was just snare drum, rudiments. But I got into it, anyway, and the teacher was an orchestra teacher, so I didn't know anything about that until later.
Okay.
But, but still, I tried to play funk, you know. You just play along with the records, man, from Sly and some of the funky stuff that he was doing, or some of the prog rock, or I had a band around, I don't know, age 15 or 16.
Okay.
A little trio, and those guys, two brothers on bass and guitar. The neighborhood was really musical.
That's cool.
Just everybody tried to play something.
Yeah.
I don't know what that was about, but I'm glad it happened.
Right, okay. And now, I know you've lived in New York for a long time. So what was the timing where, you're growing up, you're a teen, you're beginning to play, but you're thinking to yourself, okay, I'm ready to branch out from Cleveland, I'm going to pursue a music career. Like when did you say that for yourself?
Well, I did that before I left Cleveland. I had some stumbles initially coming out of high school. I got out of high school in the 11th grade. I was a smart kid, but then I was not that smart going into my first year of college. It was a lot of freedom, a lot of access. So a couple of years of stumbling before I was found my way back onto the track of pursuing music. And, just like that's what I want to do. So the family started to support that idea. So I went to the school in outside of Cleveland called Baldwin Wallace College. At the time it was college, now it's university. And man, they had a really good music program, and they had a conservatory.
Nice.
But I didn't know what that was.
Sure.
But the main thing was my love of collaboration, just connecting with people, and wow, Justin, I just found student funds. I mean, I would just start producing events, concerts, collaborating with people, just making things happen.
Yeah.
And then I hooked up with a band that off campus that was popular, or they became popular. So when you think about how the internet is now, how you quick access, this one guy, the band was called the Pony Boys, and they shot up to popularity in Cleveland and the outer areas, all on the phone, basically, getting that press, getting that attention, just playing weekly in different bars and clubs.
Yeah.
And they built a following, man, they weren't kind of funk, but it was more like, I think the term at the time was garage band or new wave type of music.
Yeah.
So I brought a particular funkness
To them.
to them. Yeah.
That they didn't have
They
until
didn't
you
have.
joined.
Exactly.
Got you. And now, were you able to record with them?
Yes.
There's some records.
Yeah. We went to the studio. I've got maybe a good 5 tracks that are pretty decent that can show you and you can hear that era.
Okay.
And then they went on, after I graduated, they went on. But to just get back to that idea of now it's time to branch out, what am I doing? Well, I didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah.
But while I was there at that college, another student turned me on to West African music.
Okay.
Yeah, and dance. So that was a game changer.
Now, and did you start getting into the African music heavy even before you got into jazz?
I'd say yeah.
Nice,
yeah.
interesting.
Maybe it was simultaneous because
Okay.
at that time, I was definitely beginning to listen to Herbie Hancock, be conscious of what that music is, Cecil Taylor, which was way out or much more out, but I was already listening. I just wasn't aware that I was being, exposed to that music.
I want to just digress for a moment, and we'll get right back to where you're at. But did you play with Cecil?
No, that was one of my dreams. No.
I don't know if my father got a chance to play with him, but I know he hung with him.
Oh yeah.
A few times. He was right
yeah.
in Brooklyn. He was right there. So anyhow.
No, your father knew everybody.
My father knew a lot of guys. He was modest about it, but he'd be like, a name would come up. He'd say, "Oh, I know that guy. Man. I was with him such and such a year." And da da da. So anyway, So.
Well, it was all of a sudden. It was the importance of being exposed to West African music, specifically while I was in undergrad, was when I did make it to New York in 1982. It was the summer of '83. They used to have something called Dance Mobile, just like they have Jazz Mobile.
Right.
They had a Dance Mobile.
Okay.
And in the distance, I heard the rhythms that I had been exposed to, And all of a sudden, I started just to cry, man, because it was like,
no doubt.
That is so familiar. Let me find this sound.
Right.
And it was a guy named Chuck Davis, dance company, Chuck Davis, American Dance Theater. And I heard those sounds, and I knew those sounds, and I saw the movement, I knew the movement, and that was it. That was a game changer for me.
Okay.
Because I just fell in love with that sound, the sound of the djembe, man.
Now, so the Chuck Davis Dance Group, and this was predominantly up in Harlem, most of this?
Well, that was in Harlem at Grant's Tomb where I saw that particular day. And with me going to Manhattan School of Music was right across the street from that school, and I lived in International House, so everything was just right there, But I had to pursue finding the music.
Okay.
And some kind of a way I connected with a group called Forces of Nature. Okay. And then just began to immerse myself into not just West African. They were contemporary and modern dance company. They were blending things, and that gave me a great opportunity to learn.
So with the dance companies, you were a part of the house band, basically, for the live performances and the concerts. And
Yeah.
Got you.
Yeah.
Nice. And then, and how many years were you kind of circulating with the dance scene?
Well, I ended up. I'm still with Forces of Nature.
Awesome. Yeah.
And have not only played live but composed a lot of their music too. So that was a great outlet for me to experiment and create music or have them use my music. But I ended up working with Alvin Ailey, and as a composer. I've written 5 ballets for that company.
Nice.
I worked with Martha Graham's company and at her school, so more as an accompanist, but still working with the main company and going out to schools and that kind of thing. Joffrey Ballet. So I've worked with some really American, name brand choreographers and dance companies.
Got you.
And then there's all these other choreographers that came out of those companies that are popular now.
Got you.
So
as the years go by, right?
Yeah.
So All right, let me shift gears a little bit. So I know Michael through my father, Juan Quinones, and as a Puerto Rican man, he came up almost more so gravitating to jazz, mostly straight ahead jazz, not necessarily Latin jazz per se, even though he could do some of that. He also liked the fusion of things, funk. He was in Santana, Hendrix. He loved Miles Davis. He loved Coltrane. And I don't know at one point he discovered avant-garde, but that's where the intersection of my meeting you kind of comes into play, because he was always trying to do these free, open concept jazz sets, avant-garde he called it. And I met you, and you're playing these more like out there. You know, it's not necessarily like dance. It's not, you know, where there's a order to it. There's a structure. There's a performance you're giving. My father used to use the term "show up and hit." So let me ask you about avant-garde and the more free approach to jazz. When did you start getting into that?
Yeah. Well, I think at the point where I came into New York, and probably around 83, 84, began to experiment with that, being influenced by, you know, Thelonious Monk or Coltrane, Steve Lacy, people like that. And then, but I did see Marvin Boogaloo Smith.
Yo, that's a great name. You know Boogaloo too? He's a legend in my mind, because I remember being a kid. I don't know, I must have been like 11 or 12, and it was a good 2 or 3 year period that my father was always with Marvin Boogaloo Smith, man. Yo, I never saw a guy do something like this. He's playing the drums so hard, and he starts basically banging his own head into the drum set. He's like I'm a kid, you know. So my impression was like, I guess that's how you do it. I mean, you know, like, I guess this is, if you're really into it, this is what it must be about, you know. So anyway, I haven't heard that name in a long time.
Well, he was playing with Pharoah Sanders.
I didn't know he played with Pharoah.
He was back in I opened the door to a club called Sweet Basil's in the West Village. Mm-hmm. That one, like, first week I was here. I ran out of money the first week I arrived. Right. And it was like a tornado. You opened up the door and just the sound just overcome you, and just Junie Booth was on bass. The pianist's name will come to me. But they were just so embracive of a kid walking into a club, you know.
Yeah.
And the music was powerful. I mean, it's Pharoah Sanders. Give me a break.
No doubt.
And then,
he's one of my favorites.
You know, Boogaloo Smith is just killing it. But I had just come from hearing Gil Evans at another club down the street called 7th Avenue South. And so just to hear Gil Evans and that big band, and how that, you know, I mean, Gil Evans oversaw a lot of Miles Davis music and wrote for him. So just to hear that band, that organism, play all that music, and then to come up the street and totally be blown away by Pharoah, man, it was like, whoa. But that was an introduction to live music. I had never experienced it, a little bit in Cleveland, not too often.
Yeah.
And so, from that point, man, specifically, it was 1990, the end of 92, where, I hooked up with a guy named Cooper Moore.
Okay.
Back in the mid-'80s. And Cooper Moore is just a phenomenal composer, musician, thinker, musician. And we did a lot of playing together, but I was playing a gig, and someone said, hey man, we know a guy named Charles Gale who needs a drum set player. So Charles Gale, I didn't know who Charles Gale was. He came over to my house and he played a little bit of he called it box, a little bit of piano. And hey man, you play box? I had a piano in the house, and I just some brushes on the drums, man. So it always reminded me of like if you heard a rat in the garbage, just the noise. He's like, you got the gig. But I didn't know that the gig was like every Monday night at what was the name of that club? The Knitting Factory.
The early days of Knitting
Yeah,
Factory.
early
When
days.
it was on Houston.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Because for our era in the 2000s, early 2000s, and going to see a lot of hip hop or even indie rock was big when me and my partner Dylan Cole was in Purchase, but Knitting Factory was
Leonard
in
Street.
what's up?
Leonard Street.
Leonard Street, Tribeca.
It moved to Leonard.
It
right?
moved to Leonard, and now it's in Brooklyn. And and let me just use this as a segue because a lot of why I want to make this content is for, I'm a DJ all my life since I was 17 years old. So was my partner, and even my brother is a videographer. He made beats and stuff at one point. We come from the beat era. We collected records, and for us, the record collecting pursuit is our discovery of like knowing what came before us and trying to put the pieces together. And what I'm realizing at my age is that we may not play instruments as well as even my father or your era did, where there was a pressure to be a great instrumentalist, but we still have an experience of performing live. And I do see what's happening is that performing live and having that interaction, that live experience, is almost becoming an abstract thing for younger generations. They don't. So to hear your story about you're coming in New York, there's this live music everywhere. You're walking down the block. There's this club and there's this club, and it's happening. I want to really impart on, if there's any younger listeners out there, that you can hear something in your headphones or hear something on a YouTube channel, but I encourage you to go see it, go experience it. And what I learned from being around jazz my whole life is that most jazz musicians, they love a good record to capture that, but they even love more what might happen live. It's like, it's that you almost get addicted to it. Like, we got to do it again, man. Like, when are we going to do this again? Because we want to capture the magic that could happen in the moment, So,
Well, it's that uncertainty. You don't know what's going to happen, right? And that's the whole thing about what you mentioned, this avant-garde or just improvised music, really. You don't know what's going to happen. You are showing up to hit. Even as a DJ, you're just showing up. You might have a collection of things, but you might put something together you haven't put together, a combination, and the crowd goes wild.
No doubt.
Right? And the same with if you've got live instruments and there is no specific melody or harmony or rhythm, but you're all just hitting, and it creates something greater than the sum of its parts. So you don't know what it is. It's never been played before. But at the root of it all, each individual person is bringing something from somewhat of a known root. It's not just an abstract. Some kind of a way, it's either some blues is coming through there or some sort of jazz riff or some sort of, even if it's just sound. Sound, it might be, I don't know, it could be the sound of the train, but it's something familiar, you know what I mean? And then it gets put into the pot,
Yeah. Let me, this is a little bit off subject, but I did watch a documentary on Rahsaan Roland Kirk.
Yeah.
And my father put me onto him at one point. He said, "Oh, kid, you don't know about Rahsaan Roland Kirk, man. He was down there in the village. You could always catch him. He was a humble dude. He stayed right there on the corner. He talked to anybody." But watching the documentary really opened me up. He had his own philosophy, just even about life. But the thing that I loved that they talked about in the documentary is because he was blind, he wanted to mimic the sounds that he heard in the environment on the instrument.
Yeah.
And he could play two instruments at the same time. He could play flute and saxophone at the same time. And he said if he heard the sound of a bird or if he heard the sound of a train going by, or and miraculously, he could actually recreate a lot of those sounds, But just if you had any words of wisdom for anybody who wants to approach music, what do you think about the creative approach and allowing yourself to open your own mind and getting comfortable within yourself in the pursuit of music? What would you say?
Well, I think building a library is important because I'm a sound designer, as a composer, sound designer. I mean, just knowing my library is important to me because I can access certain sounds, whether it be sounds of nature, industrial sounds, a collection of sounds that I've sculpted, you know, to create my own concrete sound sources. Just being able to access those things to bring that together and just continue to experiment. You got to, you know, obviously put yourself out there, collaborate, or if you can't collaborate, create your own events. You know.
Yeah, that's right.
That's what we're doing.
Yeah.
You know.
Now, we're going to transition to power drum in a minute, and also I got a question. Baba was curious. You know Leon Parker?
The drummer?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Baba wanted me to ask you. Can you share anything about Leon Parker with us?
Wow. I met Leon. I've heard Leon before I met him. I'm gonna say early '90s, nice. And I know him I know him personally because he played with Urban Bushwomen, the dance company, modern dance company.
Who you work with?
Who I worked with.
Right.
So before I got in there, he was there. He ended up doing a trip that I didn't do. I should have done it. They went to Australia and to Bahia.
Okay.
But
was that Pacific Ocean somewhere?
No, South America and Brazil.
Oh, okay.
And then to Australia. And I opted to go to Europe with Henry Rollins, more of a rock singer.
Yeah, right? The rock guy, for sure.
So, but in retrospect,
you should have went on that one.
I should have gone to Brazil and Australia. What was I thinking?
Oh, brother. Okay, no doubt.
But it was great. Henry was
we
great.
Live and we learn.
You know, yeah. It was like, you know, I'm hanging out with the rock star, but Bahia in Australia, you know, in your body is the memory of that would, and I haven't been to those places, right? But Leon is just a great musician, man. I mean, his approach, his touch, the instrument, very musical, can support the music, can push music forward. I haven't heard him in a long time now. Is he around?
He's in France.
He's in where?
In France.
So Leon Parker's in France now. Okay, great. Nice, thank you
Great
for the question.
musician, yeah.
Wow, it made me think actually, maybe we could talk about some of your, maybe if you had to name maybe two percussionists who you really feel maybe you look up to or you influence you, you know, or maybe you just want to share, maybe you have something unique that you know about a certain percussionist that maybe you can share with us that maybe we wouldn't know, you know?
Wow. When I think of percussion, I think of someone who, not just a drum set player, but also just covering a wide range of instruments and colors, textures. Ayrton Moreira.
Yeah, sure. I know that name.
Just being a great musician. There's so many, but that's one that was very influential to me, and hearing him on the great recordings. Too many to name, but and then Warren Smith.
Yo,
Warren Smith.
Warren Smith, wherever he may be.
Uptown.
He's uptown. He's my godfather. I think he's my godfather. Oh. Warren Smith. So there goes another connection. So my father was when he was around the Jazzmobile and those kinds of things in Harlem, and he played with Warren Smith in the Composers Workshop Ensemble, I believe it was called. Yeah, so he did not make it on that recording date, but he is in the liner note picture. You see my father's kneeling down. He's one of the guys pictured in Warren's studio at that time. And he, and really, I mean, I was born in '82, in the years that you arrived in New York, so I would be too young to remember a little bit of what was going on with that, but what I like about those days, and in our own way, I know with our collective, with Stolen Sound System, and I've been doing that since college. We used to be called Stolen Music Imprint, but what my father's stories used to tell me about Warren Smith, I appreciated the community aspect of it. There was a kind of a brotherhood and a more so a support system. People were looking out for each other. And what I know even happened in the hip-hop era, which influenced us and what we still practice today, as commercialism got involved, it created a divide in the communal aspect of what probably seemed instinctual as a as a pursuit of, hey man, we just trying to get on. We want to express ourselves. We know there's something better out there for us, especially what was going on in the streets in the early days in hip hop. It was a savior. But I think in the 90s, it's the era that, let's say me and Dylan are starting to collect records and we want to do music. There's so much peer pressure to be a commercial success that I feel there wasn't as many of these kinds of collectives like what Warren Smith had. Teaching people to compose, teaching people to play, having a place where people could go and practice and that kind of thing. So I know with our collective, we got a young man who's working with us right now, Hooks Arthur, and I met him when he was 18. Now I've seen him grow up to he's 25 or something now, and he said to me, Zess, you're one of the only guys that ever just even offered to like bring me into a fold, to have a communal aspect to what you're doing, and I encourage it. Like, hip hop and DJing has become so much of an individual pursuit. I feel that's what I've always appreciated about just jazz and bands and ensembles, which there used to be a lot more hip hop groups. There really isn't that many groups anymore. Everyone's just doing it solo.
Super competitive.
It's super competitive, and it's a dog eat dog world, so I hope for anybody checking this out, you think to yourself, let me go back and team up with some good people, get that communal vibe going, stir up the energy amongst what we can do together, So anyway,
Well, as a DJ, how would you go about inviting 3 other DJs to come together in a room and actually play off of each other? Does that happen? I don't see that happening too.
No, well, so there was a time, and I'm a DJ in the sense that I was always making beats, and I'm a selector, as they call them, and I'll DJ out for an event. My DJ partner Dylan over here, I got to give him his credit. He spent more time in what was the battle era. And in the battle era, they were more like DJ technicians. I mean, they really, turntablism. And so in the 90s, going into probably, there was a strong turntablism era. And in the 2000s, I would say it was its last heyday, commercially, if you will, on a much more popular note. But there's plenty of people globally keeping turntablism alive. But if you look back at groups like the Executioners were out, and there was a group called Fifth Platoon and Invisible Scratch Pickles, you would see 3, 4, 5 DJs up at once, and there's a steady beat rocking, and they're all trading off. Next guy, next guy, and they learn to begin to compose together. One guy could be on one turntable, he's scratching in a little drum rhythm, and the other guy's watching him. The other guy finds maybe a jazz record with a saxophone, and he basically takes his own solo with somebody else's saxophone solo, that kind of thing, and it was very cool, and I do miss that time, because now, if you even try to book that concert, most people are like, so wait a second, it's not just going to be a raging like dance party, like I got to sit and watch this. I don't know, so like, the people are afraid to touch it, you know what I mean? So,
but people still come in and watch musicians interact. Why wouldn't they want to see DJs interact in that way?
I think that there's a peer pressure to monetize and create products out of things. And if someone looks at something and they say, I can't make a product out of this, then they basically say, hey man, there's no return on my investment. And I do think that there was a time before the internet, because I'm the first, so I just turned 39. I would say that when I was coming out of high school, we were the first generation that experienced having the internet. But for us, it was new. And when I say the first, I know the internet's been around a while, but accessible to regular, everyday people. Like, I remember being in 12th grade, and I had been awarded some back money from something, but my mother said, hey, have you ever considered having a computer? So I was like, wow, like a computer? I was like, I thought rich people had those. I thought, like, the school had that, like, I could have my own computer. She was like, yeah, there's this thing called the internet, So I was like, all right, let's give it a shot, So anyway, like, it's interesting in hindsight knowing that we were, like, breaking ground to be that age range.
Right.
But, there was a mystery of when you decided that you wanted to learn something, and be interested in it as your hobby. That there was an old school pursuit that you had to do. You had to know where a club could be, or where a record store was, or a bookshop, or you. I remember I was into graffiti growing up, breakdancing or DJing. You could buy VHS tapes on mail order or something from the back of a magazine, but I think what happens now is, no disrespect to what could any way that someone pursues knowledge, but if you've got a YouTube or a Google at your fingertip, people mistake that for the same thing as being an expert in something because they've Googled it, and that's just my own philosophical thing. I think on what's happened is that if you have instant gratification, I don't think it drives you as much to be totally immersed, and sometimes I think that people are content with leaving it right there, and it's affecting concerts. It's affecting people's interest in wanting to go to something. So yeah, I mean, I know there's a little bit of a tangent there, but yeah, I think we're living in a strange time where people are trying. It's almost by having everything at your fingertips, it's harder to find yourself. I know music is something not only so sacred and so spiritual in a way, but it helps your own self-development. And if you don't have that same time where you can develop yourself, immerse yourself in a drum set, immerse yourself in a conga drum or the piano or even a turntable and a record collection, you might just lose the motivation. I think that's what's happening is sometimes people call it complacency. I don't even think it's complacency. I think it's not knowing that one's curiosity can be tapped into. There's not like a stimulation for it, but
well, that answers the idea of why people aren't coming together as
right.
4, 5, or 6 DJs, but yet it happened.
Yeah.
And but to me that's still like a live music set.
Yeah, no doubt.
Even though there's samples or you're manipulating sound.
Well, a lot of guys too. See, hip hop guys don't do it as much, but hip hop guys are doing it too. But it's what they call like live production sets, and I got to give it up to like the various like electronic genres from the especially in the rave era, and guys would bring out a collection of 5 or 6, 10 different machines, and they've got everything going at once. But people are starting to do it in hip hop too, where they're just improvising. They've preload all their sounds and then you'll even see 2 or 3 guys working together and they're improvising together, creating live productions. So, it is happening, and I encourage it. Anything that opens your mind to a creative process, why not?
Sure, that's true.
Why not? So, all right, let me shift gears again, and I got one little question for this because you mentioned it to me before. Before we get into Power of the Drum, and we'll move into Power of the Drum to kind of cap off things before we play. But you told me that you actually played on the D'Angelo record. So I know for a lot of DJ collectors out there like to know the knowledge of certain records, and that's such a big record. So how did you get involved with getting on D'Angelo's first record?
Oh, yeah. I had a friend named Willie Bruno, keyboard player. I think he was playing with Angie Stone.
Okay,
at the time, so there's a connection.
There it is. Angie Stone and D'Angelo, exactly.
And just some kind of a way, Kedar Massenberg, who eventually became the president and CEO of Motown, and then went on to Universal. I had met Kedar in Brooklyn when he was, just had a brownstone, and his cousin, I can't remember his name right now, was a noted rapper. He just had the house full of young people producing tracks, man, on the second floor, little cupboard in the corner.
That's cool.
And that was Kedar's thing, and just, another buddy introduced me to Kedar. And Kedar, we didn't know he was on the trajectory of becoming this world-renowned executive.
Wow.
But anyway, I go into the studio, and I get called to come in and do some percussion, And D'Angelo wasn't in the room. Let me just say that up front. He wasn't in the room, but Kedar was there. So it was, hey, man. And that was it, man. They put the track, Cruisin' track,
no doubt,
on, and I just laid down whatever, congas, triangle, tambourine, whatever was there. And, you know, I signed the papers.
Right.
To get paid, and that was it. You know, I didn't know. I mean, I knew of D'Angelo prior to that because Kedar had given me, what was that, the one, he gave me a cassette of D'Angelo's, a release of Brown Sugar.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, you know, there was just that connection there. And there was some other South African group he was trying to promote that I was a part of a band. We're trying to get a band behind this group. Mm-hmm. That never panned out. But the bottom line is that was the connection.
Gotcha.
So big ups to Willie Bruno, who's an amazing visual artist now, painter.
Okay.
But he connected me with D'Angelo for that project, and then he brought me into Angie Stone's project too, a special project.
Yeah.
That she did.
And you're also on Angie Stone record then.
Yeah.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Very
cool. Yeah, like you know, we're definitely the kind of DJ heads. We like to get our knowledge. Like we think it's cool knowing some of the backstories on some of these records.
Yeah.
So thank you for that share. All right, so let's go into Power of the Drum, because that's a big focus for me when it comes to your career. Fast forward to the early 2000s. Mm-hmm. That's how I was basically introduced to you. A couple gigs that you played with my father, you know, hanging out downtown in different jazz clubs and events and things. But Power of the Drum for me, I'm someone who I've always been interested in throwing live events, and that was partly how I got into my own music career. I graduated from a music program at SUNY Purchase, and you know, you're trying to make a name for yourself. You're just trying to get into the scene. You're willing to practically do anything you think is going to work to a degree. But out of my collective of guys, I was the guy who they relied on to try to book our events. So here I am. When I came to Power of the Drum, I was like, this is a cool event. This is like the creativity of this and just celebrating the drum. Because let's face it, any music lover, they walk into the room, the first thing they start doing is they nod in their head, they rock into that beat, you know? So it's just to have an event that's celebrating the drum, Power of the Drum, I always thought was a win-win concept because anybody can relate to that. The drum is instinctual, you know? And from what I studied and learned a little bit about just the origins of rhythm for humankind coming out of Africa, you know, that's how we as humans communicated. We had rhythm, you know. And so maybe you can go into a little bit about when you first developed the concept of the power of the drum and just what that means to you, you know, bring that to the world.
Well, I had been putting on an annual show up at Riverside Church Theater under the umbrella of the Family Festival that was run by a woman named Jewel Kinch. And, you know, over the years, I'm just developing, learning how to bring people together, organize, present ideas in dance, film, live music, you know, poetry. Because we know a lot of creative people, you know. I mean, that's our orbit we're in.
No doubt.
But one day, and just an idea came to me, man. It was like, wow, what can I do? What am I gonna do? I don't know what am I gonna do next. And just the idea of celebrating Max Roach came to mind.
Okay. Yeah.
That's what did it. And so the title, Power of Drum, I didn't even have the Power of Drum. It was just Power of Drum, P-O-D, Power of Drum. Just kept coming to my mind, you know. And then I had said, hey, you know, I'd like to celebrate Max Roach. And all of a sudden, just all the floodgates opened up, and everybody I spoke to said that would be a great idea. So I spoke to your father, who introduced me to Jason Samuel Smith, the great tap dancer.
Yeah, no doubt.
Because he knew his father, you know.
JoJo Smith.
JoJo Smith.
Yeah.
You know, and then I had just from going to many drum camps and things like that, you know, international drum camps, I knew all these drummers. And so I flew in, oh my God, man, let me think about who I can remember first.
Yeah, sure. Because I know you did a lot of
It
them.
was a lot of them, but this particular one, I was able to connect with Hudson Music, which had produced some films on Max Roach that had never been seen, or maybe
Wow.
they showed it once and that was it. So they had Art Blakey, you know, Max, and maybe I don't know, a couple other great players. And so I was able to get that. I was able to get Forces of Nature Dance Company to present something. Sonia Sanchez, but some kind of way she didn't make it, but she was open for that. And then other players who had played with Monk, meaning from M Boom, the percussion ensemble,
Yeah.
which meant Warren Smith.
Warren Smith is on that
you know,
record. I got that
was on
record.
that. So it was, you know, I just had all these amazing people who had played with him, you know, from Reggie Workman on bass to Jimmy Owens on trumpet. God, man, just I'm a little blank right now, but still was just a plethora of amazing musicians who played tribute to him. And then I had individual drummers present, almost like a salute, with Will Calhoun.
Yeah,
you
nice.
know, and-
Living Color, right?
Yeah.
No
and
doubt.
Mike Clark, who played with
Yeah.
I'm not Funkadelics, but with Herbie Hancock.
And Headhunters.
Right.
Yeah, Mike Clark.
And just collecting all these amazing musicians together to celebrate Max. Now, first of all, Max's family agreed and said, yes, you can do this.
No doubt. The blessing.
Yeah. And so they didn't know me. I knew Max, but just from, you know, just some small dinner party or a little interaction here or there, but I didn't know him, you know, like. But he was in the a hospital at that time, and they brought him. They brought him to the theater,
Nice.
and I was able to get Drummers Collective, a drum school down on 6th Avenue in the Village, to put a plaque together, a lifetime achievement, plaque, and it was really beautiful. And I was able to present that to Max. And so it was just an evening of celebration, you know, and it went over so well. It was like, what am I going to do the next year? You know, what am I going to do? So I came up with the next one, Power of Drum, and that one I think featured a number of women. And it was just somewhat improv combinations. For example, with the first one with Jason Samuel Smith as a tap dancer, I had him hook up with, his drummer's name is failing me right now, great brush player. And they just went over through the history of how brushes or how tap dance influenced jazz drumming, you know. And
Nice.
I have all that documented, you know. Hopefully I can share that with you.
Yeah, yeah.
Some of it's on that link I sent you.
Okay.
So to see that, or the following year to have another woman, another tap dancer, Demisha Sumbry, out of New Jersey, who's an amazing tap dancer, connect with Valerie Naranjo, a geo player, more like an African Ghanaian xylophone.
Okay.
To have them just improv something together that had never been done before. Tap dancing and Ghanaian geo, that ain't been done.
Right.
You
Right.
know?
Right.
So it was just to see that combination. So I just used it for several years until that director left to produce Power of Drum, you know, to explore the clave one year, to look at young people. And out of that group, Matthew Whitaker, a great blind jazz pianist, he was there and when he was 12, you know,
Wow.
on that show.
Okay.
So, you know, so Power of Drum has evolved as well. It went international. I took it over to Barcelona and worked with an orchestra and some refugees. I've taken it to the Azores, an island off the coast of Portugal,
Okay.
and established a school there. And yeah.
You established a
I
school
established
off the coast
a
of
school,
Portugal.
yes.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and it's there, and it's all about getting rhythms, and I've got a lot of donated percussion over there, and it's about empowering community through rhythm, through the power of drum, right?
Yeah, no doubt.
And so it just launched, you know, an effort. You know, you have to just get out and make things happen. You know that.
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm glad you were there.
Yeah. So the one that I went to attended to, the one I really sticks out in my mind was when Giovanni Hidalgo, the conga player, played, and he came out. He must have had, I don't know, 10 or 11 conga drums.
I think we got 6 drums.
Yeah, like and
Some special drums. His brand
yeah,
from LP.
right,
Yeah.
because he's got like the endorsement or something, right? And he just went off.
Yes,
and,
he did.
And he talked a little bit. There's another gentleman you had on that that night, and forgive me, I cannot remember his name, but he came out with effects pedals, and he was doing the thing where he was creating loops right on the spot.
Oh, that's Djembe Haddad.
Djembe Haddad.
Djembe Haddad is he's from Cleveland. I've known him since like 1978.
Cool.
You know, and we're just hanging back in October, somewhere around there. Anyway, even during the pandemic.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jamie can take, he studied a lot of frame drums and tabla and rhythms out of India, and then he takes that and loops those and plays on tops and just continue looping and building, sonic structures.
Yeah, it was cool. Like I've seen other people, whether it's effects pedals or whatever looper machine you've had, I've seen other people do that and do it well. But because he was a percussionist, it was very interesting. He had different things that were also had different timbre to them. So even though it was all percussion instruments, he created melodic structure out of it. Yeah, it was nice. Word. So with that, we're gonna begin to wrap it up, and then we're also gonna get some live playing today with Michael, and also my brother 845 Live Black Joe was able to bring his teacher with us today, Babakazi. So we're gonna bring Babakazi in also to Babakazi Oliver, great African drummer and teacher himself, and we'll get a little improv going with Michael and Babakazi Oliver as well. But maybe just to kind of conclude things, if you have any parting words for us, Michael, and just any final thoughts.
Well, yeah, I mean, the music continues to grow and flow, and you see me with my new project, Afrofuturism.
Yeah, no doubt.
Just kind of bringing a combination of rhythms and melodies, mostly coming out of Africa, but building songs in collaboration. And just bringing a lot of collaborators, over 20-something people together to produce this record, and even more when you when you expand into video or whatever.
Right.
So I would say I'm looking forward to this next year. I mean, yes, we've been locked down, but that doesn't mean you just sit down.
No doubt. No way.
So
no way.
So in this year of reflection and resurgence, it's time to create something very different, especially out of the political climate that we're coming out of, and the spiritual climate that should be even more reinforced after being locked, more or less.
Right.
So hopefully we can, as Milford Graves would say to me and probably to many others, man, we got to keep this thing changing. We got to change it up. So I charge you to go out and change it up.
Nice. Powerful, good positive words, encouraging words. Yo, Michael Wimberly.
Yes, man.
Thank you. I love you.
I love you too.
My brother, man. Yo, that's a wrap. And yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah, we got a question from the audience. Dylan Cole. Go ahead.
Yeah, the single. Well, one of the 3 members of the audience. I just wanted to know: is there somewhere people can find information on Power of the Drum online, or is there a resource?
There is. I mean, you could go into YouTube if you want to see like a 7-minute clip of a collection of some of the highlights. From that, just with Power of Drum, Michael Wimberly, and that should bring it up.
Just put it in the search.
Yep.
And actually, you know what? Let me just segue on this real quick, because I would be interested in talking with Michael going forward. Even in the best case scenario, maybe revitalizing the live concert series. I would be interested in that. And if you do have things archived, maybe we could talk about if you need any assistance in organizing it, making
Absolutely,
it sort
I have a
of
lot
release
of-
ready, you know?
That'd be great.
Yeah, we could talk. Yeah, we got a Babakazi Oliver.
This vision that you have of this massive musical compilation of percussion and melodies and melodicas, what? Just give me a snippet of this vision of the different types of instruments that you would like to bring together.
Well, I mean, we've done it. With Power of Drum, it has brought the focus from where percussionists are usually in the back of the field forward. Totally focused on them. Everybody from someone who's just specializing on Riddim Battle and South American rhythms to cajon to drum set to mallets, marimba, vibraphone, balafone, gil, tambila, all the different types of the common. And then I've had not just that, but music too, just like young players who play piano and congas and drum set and just most of this. I even had the Brooklyn Steppers, who are no longer together, but this was like a major marching a drum line. That I did not videotape that one, but wow, I got photos from it that are killer. So you know what I mean, just from everything. I tried to get everyone from West African drum groups, jazz, pop, traditional, just. But I'm open to listen to anything that you think.
I have one more question, and this is it's a personal question.
Okay.
But for me, how would we get funding to actually allow something like that to manifest? How do we get funding? Because all these ideas that I have take money and people.
Sure.
And it would be phenomenally historical. What I have in my mind to do collectively concerning music, instrumentation, the diverse part of it, to be worldly. Instruments from all over the world.
Yeah.
Musicians from every part of the continent just coming and playing. Not even rehearsal, it's needed. Just play this music as a sense of us being, quote unquote, this world we're living in. Music is a universal form of communication.
Yeah.
Every ethnicity has music.
That's right.
Every country, even countries with no electric at all, they have music.
Sure.
That's why we communicate. And money is poured into all these other contingencies about our existence, but none on these kind of projects. How do we get that money?
Sure.
Well, that's always the challenge, Baba. The money is there. You just have to write the proposals. You have to have people who are very good at follow up. I don't, as a musician, for me to I prefer to spend time working and creating, opposed to doing the filling out the application, creating the proposal. But somebody's got to do it,
Right.
And there's multiple streams and sources of funds that can support that vision. UNESCO does something like what you're talking about, just bringing entities together, global music together. But even then, it's never, the musician is still not getting the money. They might get the recognition, but they don't get the funds.
That's right.
Just a small stipend or honorarium,
An honorarium. That's a great.
Yeah.
And you know
Yeah.
what? Let me just add to that, just for my own take. I'm an artist. I always create. I've had a decent head for, let's call it the admin, right? But at the same rate, I've never really secured any kind of like endowment or any real. Let's talk about it. Real fun. But I will say that we invest into, coming into places like this, Michiko, and I have my equipment, and we do the best that we can so we have the means of production, right? And we put some good old sweat equity into it, and you know, we go ahead and we document this stuff so that, because in essence, when you're talking about money, you're talking about shopping yourself, you know. So we want to be clear, we want to stay on message, and we want to be make sure that we can convey in words and in our actual art form the heart of what we represent and be sincere. And I think this is why we're putting it together, you know, so we can begin to, like, to paraphrase that last statement that you had said before we went into the question and answer part, like, this thing keeps on changing. Like, we're trying our best to prepare ourselves for how the world may change and how the environment is going to interact with us. And we want to be prepared and stay as diligent as possible so we can begin to pursue that funding and or those means of production and that ability to move forward. So
Yes.
anyhow, yeah, man, awesome Q&A, nice. That was like, I didn't know we were gonna have Q&A. That really like threw it on me.
Interactive.
Yeah, man. And yeah, you know, we're freestyling this too, so I think we got a lot of great material to work with. And one day I could even see this with studio audience or something, you know what I mean? And we could be bringing in artists.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And you know, and we'll be looking forward, you know, my brother and both Dylan, we're excited to meet you, and you know, we would like to continue to work with you. Michael, you know, this guy's got wealth of experience and just cool dude. He knows a lot of stuff, man. So all right, so
Hey, Mike.
yeah.
I heard you
All right.
bro. You know,
I haven't been, you know, I haven't
Yeah, yeah.